We're in the season now where light plays an important role. Last night, December 21st, was the winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. It's a date when some celebrate the midwinter festival of Yule, and celebrates not only the longest night of the year, but a reminder that light is once more beginning to return to the Northern Hemisphere. From the Jewish faith, the Festival of Lights, Hanukkah, starts on Christmas Day this year. Hanukkah celebrates the rededication of the Second Temple in Jerusalem after the temple was desecrated by the Greeks who they had been at war with, and also symbolizes the hope found when they did not have enough oil to keep the candles burning. But after prayer, a miracle happened, and the candles stayed alight for 8 days, giving them enough time to produce more oil. And soon it will be Christmas, where Christians celebrate the birth of Jesus and the belief that a new light and hope was brought into the world. As we think of this time of year, the longest night and the roles that light has played as it's brought into this world at this point via the many Christmas decorations that we see on people's front lawns or on trees, or the Hanukkah candles that are lit one by one on the menorah over a period of 8 nights, or the Yule log and bonfires which are welcoming the return of the light to the Northern Hemisphere, or the Star of Bethlehem and a child that was born in a lowly stable. We remember the need to experience light in times of darkness. But we also need to learn how darkness can play an important role in our lives. The longest night is a time of introspection and reflection. It can be a time when the light might feel overwhelming, and so we may want to hibernate as animals do, to retreat, to allow ourselves to begin working on the potential healing that we may need. This can happen in that space. For example, a butterfly does not go through transformation in the light. It goes into its cocoon when it changes from a caterpillar into the being it becomes. And so this is the season for us to bear in mind the balance that we must find between the light and the darkness, recognizing that both play an important role in our lives. We can learn how to embrace the dark nights of our souls from whatever we may be experiencing. We can learn how we may begin to heal, change, or grow. And we must also be aware that even in those moments of darkness, where the light might become too much for us in that moment, but even in that dark night of our soul, we can still find community that can be with us in those safe hiding spaces that we might create for ourselves. I frequently quote Ron Johnson, formerly of the Samaritan Center, who wrote in his article, Bound by Brokenness, often the difference between the suffering which destroys us and suffering which transforms us is the presence of a caring, thoughtful other who is willing to acknowledge that brokenness with us. This reminds us that even in the darkest time we may experience, we do not have to go through those times alone. And that caring, thoughtful others who are with us, validating us, and giving us the space to breathe and grow. And because we're not alone in our darkness, but we are in community with someone who actually is witnessing us, it can mean we don't get swallowed up in the despair of isolation, but rather feel seen, heard, and transformed even in that dark night of our soul. And even though the darkness can be a safe space in situations such as what I've just mentioned, it's important that we allow ourselves not to get swallowed up in that darkness. The cocoon is a safe place to grow, but eventually the butterfly must emerge. And it can be a struggle for it to get out of their cocoon. But if not for the struggle, the butterfly doesn't develop the strength to fly. Let's face it, sometimes we may feel more familiar with the old, less helpful behaviors or habits or thinking. Why? Maybe because it's less of a challenge. We feel safe in the cocoon. Maybe not so much safe. As I said, it's familiar, it's known. And there's nothing more scary to the majority of us than the unknown. Sure, it may be better, but it will feel unfamiliar and therefore uncomfortable. When the familiar becomes comfortable, it can make it harder to leave that space. Even as we grow out of the cocoon, and we might feel like we're suffocating in it, it can be hard to make that shift over to the new and different habits, behaviors, and thinking. Spiritual awakening in the Big Book is defined, and I paraphrase, as making a conscious choice to shift from those old unhealthy behaviors and beliefs to doing the opposite of them. A psychic change, reevaluating priorities, worldview, and even self-image. Learning to see what's truly important. Making a conscious choice is important because for those who live with alcohol or substance use disorder, you didn't choose it. Maybe it was genetic in your family system, or maybe not. But it wasn't a conscious choice to develop alcohol or substance use disorder. It chose you. And it does not want the best for you. It ultimately wants to destroy your relationships with yourself, with those who love you, and with any source of genuine hope that you might have. It wants to bury the light that is inside of you. And as you recognize that you're not going to be able to uncover that light by doing those old behaviors that may have become familiar to you, it becomes important to recognize the need of choosing to do the opposite of those old behaviors so that things can change. Because, as the old phrase says, if nothing changes, nothing changes. We need to be agents of learning how to make those changes and breaking out of the cocoons when we're ready to do so, and allowing ourselves to begin to embrace the light rather than staying stuck in the darkness. A very powerful quote from Marianne Williamson, which we read prior to this message starting, comes from her book, Reflections on A Course in Miracles, and it reads, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. And it's not just in some of us. It's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. It can be challenging to hear this, to hear the message that maybe we are powerful, that our life does have meaning and purpose, and maybe we do have the ability to help pull others up just as much as we can be helped up by people. That we can be a caring, thoughtful other due to the experiences of both light and darkness we may have experienced, as much as someone else may have been that caring, thoughtful other to us when we needed them. When we fear the light that exists within us and stay in those old, familiar, comfortable, but unhealthy habits, patterns, and behaviors, we do not give ourselves the opportunity to grow. Who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous, we may ask ourselves. Actually, who are you not to be? Now, this can be a challenging statement. How many of us struggle with the feeling that maybe we're not good enough? And maybe we don't deserve whatever the hope we're cautiously seeking to move towards? The truth is that each one of us deserves the opportunity to allow ourselves to take the risk of believing that we are more than some of the decisions we may have made. That we do have gifts and talents and have the right to let them shine. There's nothing more dangerous than being told to hide in the shadows, stay under the radar, and not let your light shine. This can lead to isolation and shame, two things that are considered old behaviors, and that will try and separate us from that light and that hope that each one of us have. As we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. Now, some people have mixed feelings about 12-step communities, but one thing is true about them and any recovery program and support system that we might find, is that they seek to bring people together and away from those old feelings of shame and isolation. There was a TED talk that was given, and one of the phrases in which I use quite a lot is, the opposite of addiction is connection. The opposite of addiction is connection, community, finding the people that we can relate to. And when you look at the 12-step programs, in step 1, the very first word is we. This isn't a program of isolation, but it's a program of togetherness. The opposite of addiction is connection. If you know the story of Bill W., it goes that Bill W., once he got sober, he was with a program called the Oxford Group at that point, and he was staying in Ohio for business. He was sent there for business. He was staying there, and he was struggling due to being alone and away from his support system back in New York. So he followed the principles that he was taught, and he found another alcoholic to talk to. Now, Bill met Dr. Bob and shared his story. Now, Bob, it seems, had been nagged, shamed, and guilted about his drinking by his very concerned, and they were very concerned, family, friends, and church community. But when someone's nagged and shamed and guilted, it doesn't lead to changing positive behaviors. It just reinforces those old feelings of shame and guilt. So as he experienced this, Dr. Bob got to the point where he couldn't see the light that was in him anymore. He put on his armor, he put his mask on, and he couldn't see the light that was in him anymore. So his addiction kept him in that isolated space. But upon hearing Bill share his story, he realized that he was not the only person going through this. And for the first time, potentially, he started to experience hope. And that was the connection that he found. The opposite of addiction isn't nagging, isn't pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. It isn't shaming. It isn't just stop. It isn't that. It's connection. And it's connection with those caring, thoughtful others who have been in our shoes before. And that's where the hope can begin to grow. As Bill shared his story and let his truth shine, so it gave Bob permission to let his own light and truth shine. He was no longer on his own, but a part of something bigger, and something that would allow him to shine that light, speak his truth. And as he did that, he was then able to encourage others to do the same. There's a reading from Hebrews, which is in the Christian scripture, that reads, "We stand," and I paraphrase this, "we stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us. We grow when we are around others who may have gone through similar experiences to us. What others have lived through and learned from, it can help us in our own growth. We are stronger together. And when someone allows us to see their truth, their hope, their light, it gives us permission to begin risking sharing our truth, our hope, and our light." The Marianne Williamson quote goes on to read, "It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone." Now you may be at the point where you're beginning to recognize that you're developing that new hope, that maybe that little spark of light is beginning to reignite within you. Or maybe you're not there yet. Or maybe you are in that dark night of your soul space, and that is still valid when you begin to reach out to the people that still have your back, whether you're in your darkness or your light right now. Wherever you are, try and be curious. Curious to hear the stories, to look for the light in others, to help those who want to help you reach out to you. Be curious about looking for even the embers of the spark of light that is in yourself too. We stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us. We grow when we're around others who want the best for us and who have lived through what we have lived through, both the darkness and the light. It's helpful for family members also to realize that they can find other family members and they can grow and learn from their experience, just as their loved one is finding other people who have their shared experience and is growing in those experiences into their recovery. Another phrase I say a lot is, "We become who we surround ourselves with." Now this is a very similar phrase to the "we stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us." We're only as sick or as healthy as the people we have around us. So if we're truly looking to identify and uncover that light within us, let's surround ourselves with people whose light is already shining. Especially if their light is shining after they have experienced their own dark night of the soul. This in turn might help us identify and give us permission to shine our light and move away from that potential shame and isolation that we may have previously been experiencing. And so I want to encourage you to try and live into the words of Marianne Williamson and what she shares in her book. And you know what? If you're not feeling brilliant, gorgeous, talented, or fabulous, then ask yourself, what's getting in my way? What is the healing that you may need to be doing in those dark areas of your lives before you can come out of those hiding spaces, ready to embrace the light? As I've said, sometimes the darkness can be isolating and a space of shame. But other times the darkness can be a place where we can, like the butterfly in the cocoon, work on transformation that we may need to experience in order to grow into who we are, so that we can embrace the brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous selves within us. Sometimes the darkness is a hiding place that can give us comfort while still allowing us to connect with caring, thoughtful others who have walked that path before us. And as we learn to stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us and learn from them, so we can learn how to heal while we are in that dark space rather than isolate in it. And you know, as we experience dark nights of our soul, we're going to be more prone to being able to identify others who are in that space, so we can have more compassion towards them. We can hear with an understanding that no one else does, because we've been there too. So those dark nights of the soul can be helpful for us to grow, but also have the compassion and the ability to lift another up who might be having their dark night of the soul too. Your playing small does not serve the world. You are meant to shine. So come out of your cocoon. Be liberated from any fear, shame, and isolation that may have kept you in the shadows. And as you allow yourself to shine, others too will be liberated to shine their own light. And so the fear and shame that once held us back will be met with the realization that none of us are alone on our journeys. We are stronger together. So don't be afraid to both heal or find solace in your dark night of the soul, and learn how to eventually shine your light. Amen.